Hey, everybody. We are here at Embassy Studios, and we're getting ready to record we're going to do our first podcast here at Embassy Studios. And this is an exciting time for us. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to call it the Power Up Podcast. This is the Power Up Podcast because we really want to be able to help people power up their lives and be able to move on and go to the next level. So we're going to talk about all of those kind of topics. We are going to talk about real life situations, and we're going to talk about how to bring solutions to those life situations. And then on top of that, we're going to use biblical principles to do it because we really believe that if you use biblical principles, that the solutions that you will get from there, they actually work. And so that's what we're going to do here at the Power Up Podcast. And so as you are following us today, I really want to give you a reason, my number one reasoning for wanting to start this podcast. This is just not some video podcast where we're trying to figure out how many viewers we could get or how many clicks we could get or how many followers we could get. I really want to show you through my life how God has changed my life. And then not only that, changed my life, given me the ability to help others to change theirs. And so I've done that I've helped people, discipled them, mentored them, and helped them to move on to higher heights in life. And now I say, why not do that for the masses? Why not actually do it for the masses? So here at the Power Up Podcast, that's what we are going to talk about. So we're going to start. We're going to start right here with how God has just changed my life. When you look at my life, people see me walking around in suits sometimes and things like that. And, maybe I talk a little proper now, or I can hang out in a business meeting or hang in with the who's who sometimes. And God has allowed me to be in a lot of different places with some people that, that you would consider the movers and shakers of the world. But it hasn't always been like that. It has not always been like that. I grew up in a single parent home. My mom, she raised me particularly for the most part by herself. My dad was around. He was a really cool dude. I had a really cool dad. But he wasn't there to actually raise me. He had that disease where drugs controlled his life instead of him controlling his life. I love my dad. I really do. And we got time to be able to hang out and all that kind of stuff. Those were special times for me, even as an adult. When I would see him try to change, he really tried to change his life, but I think it had just went too far, and the drugs ended up killing him in his mid-50s. But my mom raised me by herself, and she worked hard and tried to give me everything. And so I'm not the kid that I could say, I was hungry, I missed a meal, I didn't have clothes. I'm not the one that could say I had to walk to school uphill both ways, barefooted. I'm not that person. I'm the person that could actually say that I enjoyed a very comfortable life as a child. But for me, I think for me personally, that wasn't enough. So about 11, 12 years old, 11, 12 years old, I began to sell drugs. And not only did I sell drugs, but, I became pretty good at it. And not only did I become pretty good at it, I made quite a bit of money doing it. And so that was a part in my life where now almost like my dad, I was being controlled by drugs, but it wasn't using it, it was actually selling it. And because I was in that atmosphere, everything that came along with selling drugs, I was in the middle of it. So the violence and the guns and the girls and all of that stuff was all part of my life. I was shot at many a times. You know, thank God I never actually got shot. And I really believe it was because he protected me. And he protected me through all of that, but I've been shot at quite a few times. I have been hit. I've been stabbed. I got a mark on my arm right to this day. And just so many other things that could have taken my life that it's a miracle that I'm actually here with you today. Because I was selling drugs, not only did I start at a very early age, you know, but I was also a high school dropout. In the beginning of my life and as a elementary school and even part of junior high, you know, I got pretty good grades. I was at that AB level. I think I was considered a really smart kid. But somewhere along the line, I got bored with school, making money out in the streets. School just didn't make sense anymore to me at that age. And so I just quit. I just quit going. I stopped going. Of course, my mother never knew. And I'm not sure how I kept her, the school from getting in touch with her, but I did something. And so, you know, at 17 years old, I actually dropped out of high school. Not only did I drop out of high school, but at 17, I also had a child. And so listen, I was born in a single family home. I was a high school dropout. I sold drugs. And not only did I sell drugs, but I had my child, my daughter, when I was 17 years old. But I sit here before you today and says, listen, I could have used all of that as an excuse because even when I was selling drugs, I got caught and ended up with a felony on my record. I could have used all of that as an excuse. I could have used that as an excuse not to succeed in life. But I decided to power up. And I believe God really helped me to do that. I made the decision that I was going to do something different. And so when things began to get a little hectic, and I could give you the testimonies, you know, at a later time, maybe on another channel. But when things began to get a little hectic, when things began to get tough for me, and that's around the time when they had caught me with drugs and arrested me and put me in jail. Never went to prison, but I spent 5 days in jail. That was enough for me to know that the jail thing just wasn't for me. But when all of that happened, I began to think that it had to be something different. It had to be something different that I could do. And then I began to think about my daughter. You know, if I kept going the way that I was going, there's no way I was going to continue to dodge the bullets the way I was dodging the bullets. There was no way I was not going to continue to dodge the police the way I was dodging the police. They had now begun to know who I was. I was on their radar. And not only was I on their radar, but I was on the radar of rival drug dealers as well. So we were beginning to fight over territory. All kind of things had begun to happen. Well, after I got out of jail those 5 days, I realized that was not the life for me. And so I began to go to this program that will help me to get kind of get myself together, find a job and all of that. When I went to the program, I realized that at that program, they had lawyers that could help you get out of legal trouble, and they was able to help you get your GED, and then not only that, they was help you to find a job. And I'm like, oh man, this is cool. So my job, my mind was, because I was still thinking like the streets, in my mind I was saying, you know what, I'm gonna go down here, I'm gonna get cool with everybody, I'm gonna learn this legal system, and it's gonna help me to get back out in the streets and do it bigger, better. And so I had a much bigger plan for the streets, and that's what I thought I was gonna end up doing. So went to the program, got with the legal department, and they gave me their lawyers, which was really some top lawyers in the city. And then I had my own lawyer. They all, and then the director of the program wrote the judge a letter telling him that that I would be okay if I could just stay in that program. And so they end up, instead of sending me away to prison, because I was in that program, they actually let me out on probation. And when the judge asked me, did I have something to say for myself, I said a few things, and the things that I said as we was walking out of the courtroom, my lawyer looked at me and said, have you ever thought about going to law school? And I was like, no, well, why would you say that? She said, because what you just said in that court, most lawyers don't even know to say that. And I said, well, I just kind of said what came to my mind. And so from that moment, I decided I was going to be a lawyer. And so I went back to the program that I was going in at the time, and they allowed me to volunteer in their legal department. So now here I am, an ex-drug dealer. Now I'm going to this program every day with a suit and tie on. And not only do I have a suit and tie on now, I'm at the point where I'm going down to the courts and I'm filing documents with them, and I'm getting stuff signed by judges, and my whole life was opened up to a whole new perspective. Once it began to open up to a whole new perspective, the streets came further and further away from my mind, and I decided at that moment, again, like I said, that I was gonna go be a lawyer. So I went and got my GED. You know, I signed up for college. And when I signed up for college, I was planning to, I was planning to get my degree in business administration, and then I was gonna go on to law school from there. That was the plan. And hey, it was working. We were doing fine. I was working at the law firm. And the lawyer who was there, he actually created a position for me in his law firm, because when I was volunteering at the law firm, at the program I was in, they literally helped me find a job at a real law firm, or another law firm, if you will. And so when he created a position because he heard about my story, and he knew that I was, kind of serious, and that I really wanted to take care of my daughter. So he literally created a position for me in his law firm. And when he created that position, what I was doing for the program and volunteering, I was now getting paid for it. And it was so cool. I was down in the court wearing a suit and tie every day. My life had changed. Why? Because I was exposed to a whole nother world. I was exposed to a whole nother world. That's one of the things we're going to do here for you at this Power Up podcast. We're going to begin to expose you. We're going to begin to expose you to some different things, some different ways of thinking. Hopefully we can expose you, to some different people, some cool people, some people that can get you some advice or help you to just mature and grow financially, spiritually, physically, all that kind of stuff. So I worked at this law firm for a moment. And then as I worked at the law firm, the lawyer who was actually that owned the law firm, he sat me down and he said, you have a great business mind. You need to start your own business. So he helped me to start my own business right in the law field. And so what I was doing for him, he helped me to begin to do it for a number of different lawyers. So now I had this company, I called it Legal Resource Systems, and we was contracting with all kind of different law firms. And again, I'm doing the same thing. I'm filing documents, I'm getting things signed by judges. And so I was actually back in the judges' chambers and all that kind of stuff. Here, yeah, high school dropout, drug dealer. That's the kind of stuff that God can do for you. And so when I began to do all of that, and I began to have this legal resource system business, it began to grow, began to do well. But I kind of got uneasy with it and kind of got so familiar, it was easy. So I decided, hey, I'm gonna take my legal career, and I'm going to move to Washington, D.C. Hey, I know you are enjoying the podcast. However, I just want to stop just for a second to let you know, look, we're here at Embassy Studios, and Embassy Studios actually hosts the Power Up podcast. So if you like this Power Up podcast, what we want you to do, we want you to put Power Up into the comments, and I'm gonna make sure you get a free tool. So again, put Power Up into the comments so we can send you a free tool. Thank you, and keep watching and keep hanging out with us. God bless you. And I was going to move to Washington, D.C. And the attraction to that was, here's why, because I had already been involved in so many political campaigns. I was helping people run for office. I helped one guy was running for judge, another guy was running for county commissioner. And so I just began to kind of like love that life. And I'm in the courts all the time. We had the Justice Center here. I was always down there. And then it was another, really popular one that was, it was called we called it the old courthouse. It was over there, mingling and shaking hands and, doing my work. I was down in the county administration building all the time, just, helping to do research on real estate and, filing stuff there, just like I was filing stuff in the courts. And so the attraction to all of that said, hey, let's move to DC and do this thing bigger. And so I was gonna, just finish up my bachelor's degree in Washington, D.C., and then I was gonna try to find me a law school there. But in the meantime, I was gonna move my business down there and just do the things that, I wanted to do because, hey, I could make a lot of money doing this. I was really excited about it. And of course, God had a different plan for my life. I thought I was getting ready to go one way, and God decided he was going to take me another way. My mom really didn't want me to move out of town for whatever reason. So she would hope that the pastor of the church that I was going to at the time would talk to me to kind of talk me out of it. But he wasn't necessarily going to talk me. He didn't necessarily try to talk me out of it. He just wanted to make sure that I was doing the right thing. And because of the concern of my mother. So he called me and he called me up, told me to meet with him, and I did. And we're talking, and he's like, what's going on? And I had this grandiose story that I was going to tell him so he could be excited for me. And in the middle of talking with him, I walked into his office saying that I was not going to ask him one question. It was one question I was not going to ask him. It was in the back of my head. And so while I'm sitting here talking to him, that question came out of nowhere. I say, Pastor, how you know you've been called to preach? And he just kind of reared back and he looked at me and he said, well, you kind of just know. And so I was telling him some of the things that was going on in my life, and how I was a kid trying to preach around the table like my great grandfather, and how even sometimes I catch myself in the mirror preaching his sermons. And he said, yeah, those are some of the signs. He said, Cliff, those are some of the signs. He said, but listen, um, just go do whatever it is that you're trying to do. Because if you've been called to preach, you're not going to be able to do any of the things that you're trying to do. So I said, okay, cool. Well, Pastor just gave me the green light. Do whatever I want to do. Great. And so some kind of way in the middle of our conversation, the book of Revelations came up, and he gave me these videotapes on the book of Revelations. And, I'm excited, because I do like reading. I love reading. The Bible always have. Just thought it was just always attracted my attention. Now he's giving me some videotapes, but he wanted me to give them back to him before I left. So that meant I had to hurry up and watch them, because I was getting ready to leave like the next day or in the next couple days. No, it was actually the next day. And so I'm sitting here, and I had sold everything, gave up my apartment where I was living, and, sold all my furniture because I was moving to Washington, D.C. I bought a ticket, which is still in my drawer to this day to remind me of what God was telling me. So I bought a ticket and, put it in my drawer. Bought a ticket so I could fly to Washington, D.C. It was a one-way ticket, had a place to stay. I was going to go stay with one of my cousins, had it all set up. So all I had left to do was just watch these videotapes so my mother can take them back. And man, it was cool. It was like the 7 signs of Christ, and it was so cool. But the one thing that stuck out for some reason, and I know what it is now, but I didn't know what it was at the time, was the fact that in the last days there was going to be earthquakes. And I know a lot of other stuff was going to happen, but the earthquakes at that time is what stuck with me. It stuck with me, and it stuck with me, and it stuck. And I could not get the earthquakes out of my mind. I would go to the restroom, and these earthquakes, I'm like, man, what is it about these earthquakes that's bothering me? I tried to go sit down and relax, and I'm thinking about earthquakes, and I'm trying to eat my food, and I'm thinking about earthquakes. And so after I got finished with the videotapes, I got finished doing all of that stuff, I get up and I say, I know that God has called me to preach, but I'm getting ready to go to Washington, D.C., and I'm going to make me a lot of money. And then maybe after that, I'll come back and preach. And the moment I said that, we had an earthquake here in Cleveland. The moment I said it. And after I said it, this girl I was dating at the time, she called me and she said, did you feel that earthquake? I said, what earthquake? That was a truck that just rolled past my house. And she said, so I'm in Paintsville, Ohio, and you in Cleveland, Ohio, and we felt the same truck. And I'm like, oh my God, that was an earthquake. Scared me to death. I dropped to my knees with tears in my eyes, began to pray like, Lord, okay, I don't know what to do now. And needless to say, I did not go to Washington, because if God shook the earth just because I said what I said, no telling what he was going to do while I was in an airplane. So I didn't go to Washington. And I tried to call my pastor. He wouldn't answer. I tried to call my uncle too. My uncle's a minister, so I tried to call him. He didn't answer. Tried to call my mother. She didn't answer. Nobody answered. Nobody. The only thing I could do at that time was talk to God in prayer and let him talk to me by reading his word. So I just sat there and I read the word. I'm in tears. And so I finally get through that day and took the tapes back to my pastor. I actually met with him, told him what was going on. And at that point, my whole life changed. So now, this drug dealing dropout, came from a single parent home, and had a kid at 17 years old. I was now with some college, okay? I did have some college. And of course, I had gotten my GED. I was a father to my daughter. I wasn't an absentee father. I was right there with her. And then now, here I am being called into the ministry. And so, with all of that, I left regular college, and then I signed up for seminary on the recommendation of my pastor. He didn't tell me to get out of regular college. He just said, hey, you should go to take some seminary classes, so you can sharpen your gift. And I did, and I began to like it, and so I ended up getting a 4-year degree in biblical studies, and then I ended up getting a master's degree in biblical studies. And right now, I am ABD, all but dissertation, with my doctorate degree, with school. And so God allowed me to go through all of that, and now I almost have a doctorate degree. And then not only that, but when you look at statistics, and statistics will show that most young ladies that come from that kind of environment with that kind of father, they end up being, statistics kind of show that they don't do well. Well, when my daughter was 6 years old, she said she wanted to be a doctor, and she never strayed. And I did everything I can in my power to help her to do that. And now to this day, my daughter, who was born to a father that was 17, is actually a medical doctor to this day. I am also one of the associate pastors at a church here in Cleveland. And so God took me from all of that to become an associate pastor. Listen, through all of this, I walked away from the legal field. When I walked away from the legal field, I ended up going into carpentry because God actually kind of told me to do that, to be honest, through his word. He took me to read about Noah. I never knew that Noah was a carpenter. And so that kind of intrigued me a little bit. I won't bore you with the whole story. That kind of intrigued me a little bit. And now that I was walking away from the legal field, because listen, there was no way in the world that I could continue to do what I was doing in the legal field. It was a little sketchy. It was kind of close to the streets, to be honest with you. But there was no way in the world I could continue to do what I was doing or continue to act the way I was, because it was all about money. It was about power. It was all about, still about the girls and the women. So I didn't want to be that person. I wanted to be right as a minister. So God showed me through his word, took me to Noah. I did some research on Noah, found out he was a carpenter. And right at that time, I got a phone call that gave me the ability to be a carpenter. So I figured, hey, this must be something God is doing. So needless to say, within a couple days, promise you, within a couple days, I was working on a job as an apprentice in the union carpenters. And then that turned into a construction company. It was crazy. So now here I am, I'm a minister at the church, and I got my construction company. And I'm liking this. This is okay. And so, then out of nowhere, the Lord tells me, walk away from my construction company and end up being a facility manager at our church. And I'm like, Lord, are you serious? Doesn't even make sense to me. And then from the facility manager, I went to full-time. I was doing it full-time, and then I ended up becoming one of the associate pastors at our church. And so that journey is why I'm here today. And that journey is why I'm here today, because in the middle of all of that, listen, I met some of the who's who around the city. I've been in some rooms and I've learned some things. And so I think I have some insight that I could share, and it really began to help people, who are at one level and want to go to the next level. And that's what this power up thing is all about. Listen, we want to power up our lives using biblical principles. And really, at the end of the day, what I'm really saying, I want to see you use the purpose that accomplish the purpose that God has placed you on this earth for. That's what I want to see. I want to be able to see you accomplish the purpose that God has placed you on this earth for. And not only that, I want to see you make an impact in this world for his kingdom, because that's the only thing that's going to matter. It's the only thing that's going to matter is when you're doing it for him and with him. So let's power up, y'all. Let's get this thing together. Now you see why I'm here on this podcast, and I want to have some fun. And yes, we're going to have some opportunities, but the most thing we're going to do, we're going to power up, because life changes when you tap into your purpose. God bless you, and we're going to see you soon.